Okay, in episode 8 and episode 9, we show the Robinsons falling from the frying pan into the fire once again after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and we're talking about Lost in Space. And in episode 8, in which they call Unknown, they manage to get the water purified. Maureen is able to convince the captain of the Resolute that the math works for what she's planning, even though it is kind of risky. And that is the situation they find themselves in when it comes down to the point that the captain basically sides with Maureen, and even after they capture Maureen and get her off the bridge after threatening to suffocate the engineering crew, this is the situation. And so, in order to try to save the engineering crew, Maureen gets into a maintenance pod and goes around and manually closes the airlock so that the chamber is able to reoxygenate itself. And yet, Hastings is one that decides that he's going to lock them out, and John goes out to try to save her, and neither one of them can get back in. She's run out of power. He grabs onto her. They end up kind of in orbit trying to catch up with the Resolute and find that they cannot do it. And so what happens is that they decide that they will wait until the Resolute comes back around in its next orbit and catch on to that. Meanwhile, they're communicating with the kids and make a plan once they can get themselves to get back on the space station on the Resolute and hide out. Now, all of this is one plot. The other plot, of course, is the trial of Judy and Penny to take a chariot and run it down the halls of the Resolute in order to provide kind of a shell game in which Dr. Smith, when they are caught and finds there's nothing that they have in the chariot that they're trying to smuggle out, is something. She seems to have a new appreciation for the wily cleverness of Penny, which is another interesting parallel that they have between Penny and Dr. Smith. I think this is how they're going to, going forward, be able to keep Dr. Smith. In the original series, Dr. Smith started out as an enemy agent, and all his interest was in killing the Robinsons. But the fact is, even Jonathan Harris said this is something that was not sustainable. You can't have an evil person on there. Eventually, they'd just throw him out an airlock and be done with him. And in this case, we see the same thing with this version of Dr. Smith. She needs to do something to soften up, or the Robinsons need to do something to know that they need her more. And they're doing both of those things. So we're seeing a relationship between her and Penny in which she sees part of herself in Penny and realizes that it doesn't always have to be for bad purposes. And so I think what we're going to have is someone who is kind of handy at not being particularly bound by a moral character, but useful to the Robinsons. So that's my guess as where Dr. Smith is going to go. Will and the robot expert, what was his name, Ben, I believe, goes down to the planet's surface, and they are able to basically revitalize Scarecrow. Scarecrow goes into a place along where the lightning pit was that they were in a previous episode, and the robot is, Scarecrow is reconditioned into full health and comes back with, Ben is killed during the time that they're trying to help him, but Scarecrow comes back with Will and the other colonists back to the Resolute, and then helps free our robot, and also help defend against an armada of robots that are also awakened about the time they brought down Scarecrow to be revitalized. So they're all coming after now the Resolute, and so the idea is that they're never going to be able to fight them off. And so a plan is hatched where all 96 children are going to be put on a Jupiter transport, and our robot is going to have his engine and use it to transport them all to Alpha Centauri, while we have the rest of everybody just scatter in their Jupiters. And that's where that goes. So it takes us to the last episode, in episode 10, in which they basically try to save the children by sending them off with Robot. Scarecrow sacrifices himself in order to protect the people on the Resolute from the other invaders, and they decide that the only way that they can get the robot invaders away from them is to go ahead and destroy the Resolute. And they do that by lining up. It doesn't have a self-destruct. That's a funny part of it. Every science fiction show I've ever seen, every ship has a self-destruct, and Marine suggests that, and the captain says, why would anybody put a self-destruct on a spaceship? And it makes a lot of sense. It's some of those things that you never think about before. At any rate, with that, the ship is sent into a collision course with the part of it that it jettisoned. But that's how they did it. They destroy the Resolute. They all escape in their Jupiters. And Robot and all the children that are under command of Judy, who originally wasn't going to go with them because she was 19 and considered herself an adult, but they convinced her to be the captain of the mission, and they take off into the Rift, but end up in the lost ship that her biological father was in command of. And that's where they leave the episode. So, as we leave the series of this season, we have, waiting for next year, what happens to the children who are reunited with Judy's biological father, and what happens to the other colonists who are left along the robot planets. So this should be interesting as they take it in the next season. Once again, as we say, Lost in Space has been an interesting show and an entertaining one. I wouldn't say it's the best science fiction I've ever seen by any mark, but it's a nice diversion. It's something that is comfortable. It is something with characters that are relatable. It's something that is a little bit different, and a little bit different even than the old Lost in Space series. It's enough of it for you to remember that there was something to that, and enough of a reimagination to make it interesting. So that is our review of this season of Lost in Space. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed these videos. As always, please remember to subscribe, and our next video will be on the next episode of Doctor Who, and we hope you join us at that point. Until then, don't go far.